Good morning. Welcome back to another Gibbs adventure. And today I thought I'd skin a beaver. I don't know if I've done one on that or it's been quite a while. So I figured I'd just share how I do beavers up. This is probably getting close to my couple hundred beaver this year, I guess, anyways. But I just want to show you what I do real quick. I always like to make sure they're dry. That's really important. And I always give them a brush. So I lay them on the table. The fur's dry, flip them over, give them a quick brush. And he's good to go. I just feel for where the joint is here. Cut the feet off. Some guys like to use different techniques to do it. Once you've done a few, it gets pretty easy. The trick is just to find what works for you and be consistent with it. And give it a little twist. Cut off the sinew. Next, I split it right up to the vent hole from the tail. Go on each side of the lips here. I like to keep the tail on, personally, because it's a handle to pick up the carcass. Some people like to take the tail right off, which is doable, but for me, I just like to be able to handle it without getting all full of grease. So then I take the back of my knife and I run it up to the lip here. Try to make sure I'm kind of sorted. If I don't like the line, I just wipe it out and I'll do it again. And it just gives me a line to follow. I like to use a roofer's hook to split it. Trick with the roofer's hook is to get it on a bit of an angle. You open it for length, the full length. I always take my pelter knife and I start around the legs, turn the beaver sideways. I'm a rough skinner, so what that means is that I don't try to skin it perfectly clean of any grease or meat. So I like to be able to kind of get it off the hide as fast as I can. And when you first start skinning beaver, believe it or not, it's the smaller ones are harder to skin actually than the larger beaver. Larger beaver have tougher hides and they're actually easier to skin than smalls and medium sizes or cubs. Take my other knife, run it up the back of the leg like so. Go back to the back leg here now. So what I'm trying to do is get the leg out. Once I have the two legs out, slide it sideways here. I come very close to splitting this guy wide open. And when you use the roofer hook, you gotta teach yourself the trick of getting it on a bit of an angle instead of straight down, because that's usually when you gut them. If you do gut them, an easy trick to use is a piece of paper towel and just put it over top of where the hole is, and it'll keep all the innards in there. Paper towel, piece of newspaper, something that'll just cover up the hole so you can get the job done. So what I'm doing with my back knife here is I'm just sliding it in between the leg and pulling up. And I go back to my big knife again. So I probably do a couple of things slightly different than a lot of other guys that skin beaver or folks. Seen some pretty good lady skinners. The trick is to find a consistent approach that works really good for you and stick with it. Now when I get to this stage right here, I'm usually careful, and what I do kind of different than a lot of people is this is when I take out the caster. And the reason I take the caster out now is that when I'm kind of done with the hide, I can just bag it and tag it and out the door it goes. So this is a male. I try to cut above the caster down to the caster sack, and I try to get it without a lot of red meat on it. Once I get it open like that, I go on the back here and I roll it out, and I'm trying to peel that red meat off so that I get a nice clean caster. The caster buyers don't like when you leave it full of red meat. You'll get that little saddle that'll stick to it. So you can see I'm working the gland out pretty good here. You can tear them sometimes, but most of the time they're going to come out pretty good. So there's a little bit extra meat here, and I'll just try to pull that off with my fingers. So that's the caster gland, and the other gland that's here that can be of use to trappers is the oil gland. And I take off the oil glands like that. I usually stick them right down the side of my table. The caster glands, when I get them out, see how I got it clean with basically no meat on it? And I just hang it up on my wall here. Now it's something else that I do that's a little different than a lot of guys, is I have an extra hook, or I call it my extra hand. So I got my beaver like so. Bring my hook out. It's just a big fishing hook that I ground the barb off. And then it gives me something to pull it against. Kind of like what I call an extra hand. This guy's going to go over there. Now normally I would just skin it down to the edge of the table, but because I'm trying to videotape it today, I'll just bring it to the edge here. But you see how I can pull against it and it keeps my beaver up? I call it an extra hand. When you do enough beaver, you get the feel for it. Where you're cutting in. And what I do generally is I bring it to the edge of the table. I'm not going to do it right now because my camera's not really set up for it, but I use the weight of the pelt to hang over the edge of the table and actually pull it down. And I can pull against my string, but like I said, right now, because I'm using the camera right at the end of the table here, I can't really get away with it. So I'll kind of improvise. I'll turn it like this. Now I have the weight of the pelt pushing down. There's the one ear. Now if I'm going to put a hole in a beaver, which I do occasionally, I always usually do it around the head like this. I get going a little bit too fast. I like to switch my knives here, get away from my beaver knife, use a pelter knife. Coming up to the eyeballs here. Now you'll find on a beaver, they have like a little plate that's, a little piece of gristle that's in front of the eyes. And you have to kind of get over that to get it, the skin. And you don't want to try to skin it too much, because that's usually when you make big eye holes, when you hit that little piece of gristle there that's in front of the eye. So then I just keep pulling, pulling, and I'm done. And that's it. So my beaver's done. I unhook them. Now normally what I would do is just fold it skin to skin so it doesn't touch, and then I would freeze them, because normally when I'm doing them, I'm trying to catch beaver. I'm not trying to just put them up at the same time, because I find it burns me out. So I rough skin them and I put them in a freezer. Get them in a plastic bag. Actually, I'm going to show that because a lot of guys don't. Now, something else that's easier to do now, because I have this beaver done like so, is to bag it. If you're going to use them for bait, which most of them go for, right now while it's on the table, and you'll see why I like to have the handle, I slide it in like so. I can grab the beaver by the tail like that. That's what I mean by a handle. And then it's bagged up and ready to go. The beaver itself, I'm going to go get a bag, and I'm going to show you how I would freeze it. But basically speaking, if I'm going to do it pretty quick, I will freeze them like this, flat. And I'll just lay them in the freezer, and you have to be careful you don't put too many in at once, because you can overwhelm a freezer. You know, you have to put like, say, 8 or 9 pelts, put a layer of cardboard or something. What I do is then, for myself, because sometimes I'm going to be a month, is I roll them up like so. And our milk comes in Canada in bags. I'm going to go get one. So that's one of our milk bags. And they're nice and heavy duty. And I put them in like so, push the air out of them. Normally I have a bunch of the little plastic tabs that come with them. I'll tab it, and what I like to do is I write the date and the size of the beaver that's inside of the bag. And then when I'm starting to process them, then it gives me a good idea. These guys I'm going to process right away today. So what I other thing I watch out for, if I'm not going to freeze them like that, is I'll hang them up like this. Now you notice my beaver are dry. Okay, it's a completely dry beaver. That's what I'm always aiming for. I hate putting up wet beaver. It never dries properly. It never gives a nice finish to it. You can brush it 10 times and it still doesn't come out as nice as if you took the time to dry it while you're doing it. So that's how I do a beaver. So hopefully I passed on a few tips. Everybody does them a little different, but that's how I do it.